Mr. Clardy to explain House Bill. Mr. Clardy to explain House Bill 1369.
Thank you, Mr.
Is there any
Speaker.
consideration of House Bill 1369? The chair is none. The clerk read the bill.
HB
Chair recognizes Mr.
1369.
Clardy.
Move passage.
Mr.
Question-
Speaker,
Mr. Stickland.
does the gentleman yield for some questions?
Does the gentleman yield?
No, in fact, Mr. Speaker, I'll yield the floor. Mr. Stickland, come down and explain his
Gentleman's
objection to
yielded the
bill.
floor.
Mr. Speaker, parliamentary inquiry.
Please state your inquiry.
Why is he yielding the floor when I asked him if he had questions, if he would answer questions?
I can't get into the mind of Mr. Clardy, but he has yielded the floor.
Is
and
the
if you want
clock
to
running
speak-
right now on 10 minutes?
It is not running right now because you're doing a parliamentary inquiry.
Okay, is it now?
Not until you come to the front mic and start speaking. The gentleman's yielded
I'm not
the
asking
floor.
him to yield the floor.
Well, he gets to decide that.
Okay,
We're not
then
in
we'll wait
control
here.
of that. Question occurs on the pass of House Bill 1369. Is
Mr.
it
Speaker,
Mr. Stickland?
does the gentleman yield for some questions?
It doesn't appear so. No, sir.
Okay, then how can we pass the bill if he's not moving passage?
I just moved passage of the bill.
Are you moving passage for him, Mr. Speaker?
He has moved passage, Mr. Stickland.
I asked a question beforehand, so I believe my questions supersede his.
You're incorrect. We're either going to have a vote on the bill or you can come speak about the bill.
That is not true. I asked if he would answer questions, Mr. Speaker.
Question occurs on the pass of
Mr.
House Bill
Speaker,
1369.
parliamentary inquiry.
Please state your inquiry, Mr. Stickland.
So he can cede the floor for no apparent reason, and then you can move the bill for him? When has this ever happened before, Mr. Speaker?
That's not what has occurred, Mr. Stickland.
What parliamentary inquiry?
State your inquiry.
What has occurred?
Mr. Clardy has moved passage and the chair is calling the question.
And if I ask a question beforehand, procedurally, to engage in debate on a bill, when am I supposed to do that?
You did it at the proper time, but Mr. Clardy has yielded the floor and does not wish to engage in debate.
And parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Speaker.
Please state your inquiry.
If he yields the floor, then how can you move passage? Isn't him yielding the floor the last procedural move that he made?
Yes, after he moved passage, Mr. Stickland.
So he moved passage and then yielded the floor to who?
He yielded it to the chair to pass his bill. Unless you desire to come to the front mic and speak.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Stickland.
this is the first time I've ever heard of this happening.
Me
Is
too.
that true? So this is a new one.
Chair's not advised, Mr. Stickland. I'm not sure.
Parliamentary inquiry.
Please state your inquiry.
Has this ever happened before?
We're not aware, Mr. Stickland.
So procedurally, I'm trying to understand this. We laid the bill out. He came up, described it with, I believe, one word. Then came back up. I asked if he would yield the
The
questions.
chair lays out the bill. The member lays the bill out. The chair then recognizes the clerk to read the bill. Then we recognize the member to move passage. And Mr. Clardy
But before
has
he
done
moved
so.
passage, I interjected with a question.
You did. And he chose to yield the floor. And at that time, we moved passage.
And
Mr.
that's
Stickland.
fine, Mr. Speaker, but I'm trying to figure out why the clock does not continue to run.
Because we're not discussing the bill, Mr. Stickland. You're welcome to come to the front mic, and the clock will run when you get here.
I would rather ask questions. I don't know if I want.
And the
I
clock
don't have
doesn't
anything to
run
say.
while the chair has the floor, Mr. Stickland.
Well, I would like to ask Representative Clardy some questions.
And unfortunately, Mr. Clardy has yielded the floor.
So he's
which is-
refusing to answer my questions.
It seems to be the case. Chair recognizes Mr. Stickland, and the clock has started.
Would the gentleman yield?
I do not yield.
Gentleman does not yield, Mr.
Would you
Clardy.
yield for questions? You seem to want to have a discussion about
gentleman-
this bill. a moment ago.
Representative
Does the gentleman
Clardy
yield for
has filed
questions?
House Bill
Appears
number
not.
1369, a bill to be entitled as an act relating to the Jobs and Education for Texans, JET, grant program. Be it enacted by the legislature of the state of Texas.
Would the gentleman yield for
Section
questions?
1, I do not yield. Section 134.006C, Education Code, is amended to read
Mr.
as
Speaker,
follows.
Mr. Speaker, I have a parliamentary inquiry.
C,
Please state your inquiry.
in awarding
Mr.
a-
Stickland, allow Mr. Clardy to state his parliamentary inquiry. Please state your inquiry.
At the front mic, when there's discussion of the bill, is it not true under our parliamentary rules it has to be germane and material to the bill that's pending?
Yes, sir, Mr. Clardy, you are correct.
Then I would ask that the speaker, not the speaker, but the gentleman at the front, talk about the bill itself and not just read verbatim something that's in front of him.
Understand. Mr. Stickland, Mr. Clardy requests that you confine your remarks to the topic of the bill.
Thank you.
Continue.
C, in awarding a grant under this section, comma, the commission shall primarily consider the potential economic returns to the state from the development of
Mr.
the career
Speaker, would the gentleman
and
yield?
technical.
So,
I
gentlemen,
do not yield.
Gentleman does not
Education
yield.
course or program. The commission may also consider whether the course or program
Mr. Speaker,
is
parliamentary
number
inquiry.
1,
Please state your inquiry, Mr. Clardy.
As I understood a moment ago that the questions or comments from the front need to be germane and material to the bill, I raise a point of order on continued discussion by Mr. Stickland.
Please bring your point of order down front. Point of order is withdrawn by Mr. Clardy. Chair recognizes Mr. Stickland, and we're back on the clock.
Mr. Stickland, would you yield for a question?
Representative Kane, with
Actually,
all due respect, I think I'm going to continue here.
Yeah, actually, Mr. Kane, you asked the chair if Mr. Stickland will yield.
Mr. Speaker,
Not to be rude. Mr. Stickland, do you yield to questions?
I do not.
He does not, Mr. Kane.
And members, I apologize for that confusion. I don't want you to miss any of this important stuff, so I'm actually going to start over. A bill by Representative Clardy, House Bill number 1369, a bill to be entitled an act relating to the Jobs and Education for Texans, the JET grant program, to be enacted by the legislature of the state of Texas. Section 1, Section 134.006C, comma, Education Code, comma, is amended to read as follows. C,
Mr. Speaker,
in awarding a grant.
Mr. Clardy,
parliamentary inquiry.
please state your inquiry.
Under Section 1, when there's a reading of a paper is called for, would that be a supportable point of order? Rule 5, Section 31.
I don't believe that would apply to Mr. Stickland's situation.
In awarding a grant under this section, comma, the commission shall primarily consider the potential economic returns to the state from the development of the career and technical education course or program, period. The commission may also consider...
Mr. Springer,
Parliamentary inquiry.
please state your inquiry, Ms. Springer.
Mr. Speaker, is this one of the parliament?
Hold on. Members, could we have order in the chamber?
Mr. Speaker, is this a typical tactic one might use to make sure a pro-life bill that's on tomorrow's calendar is not reached?
Chair is not advised, Mr.
Thank you.
Springer. Go ahead, Mr. Strickland.
Well, I lost my place, so I'm going to start over. Representative Clardy has filed House Bill number 1369.
Mr. Speaker,
a bill to be
will the gentleman
entitled...
yield?
Does the gentleman yield, Mr. Strickland?
You wanted to talk about the bill, Mr. Stickland?
I do
Will we
not
talk about
yield.
the
The
bill?
gentleman does not yield, Mr.
You don't want to know
Clardy.
about anything
I
about
do
the
not
history
yield.
of this bill?
I
You
do
want
not
to start
yield.
all over
I will
and read
never
over?
yield. A bill to be entitled an act relating to the jobs and education for Texans in the JET grant program, period. Be it enacted by the legislature of the state of Texas, Section 1, Section 134.006C. Education Code is amended to read as follows. C. In awarding a grant under this section, comma, the Commission shall primarily consider the potential economic returns to the state from the redevelopment of the career and technical education course or program, period. The Commission may also consider whether the course or program is, 1, is part of a new, comma, emerging industry or high-demand occupation in the region served by the public junior college, comma, public technical institute, comma, or independent school district, comma, as demonstrated by local labor market information. 2, offers new or expanded dual credit career and technical educational opportunities in public high schools, is provided in cooperation with other public junior colleges or public technical institutes across existing service areas, or 4, includes career counseling and advising services for students.
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Speaker.
Please state your inquiry, Mr. Kane.
Mr. Springer just inquired about pro-life bills. Is there a procedure that we could bring those pro-life bills up right now?
I believe the body could do anything with unanimous consent, but right now we're in the middle of another bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you.
Members, I've lost my place again. I'm going to have to start over. No, it's unclear.
I had my finger on it.
A bill by Representative Clardy, House Bill number 1369, is a bill to be entitled an act relating to the jobs and education for Texans in the JET grant program, period. Be it enacted by the legislature of the state of Texas, Section 1, Section 134.006C, comma, Education Code, comma, is amended to read as follows. C. In awarding a grant under this section, comma, the Commission shall primarily consider the potential economic returns to the state from the development of the career and technical education course or program, period. The Commission may also consider whether the course or program is, number 1, is part of a new, comma, emerging industry or high-demand occupation in the region served by the public junior college, comma, public technical institute, comma, or independent school district, comma, as demonstrated by local labor market information.
Mr. Speaker,
Number 2,
Mr. Gonzalez,
parliamentary inquiry.
please state your inquiry.
If we're going to do this, can we have Mr. Stickland do it in the accent of our choice?
No, Mr. Gonzalez, we're not. We're trying to pass bills on a local calendar, and I'd appreciate the membership becoming a little more serious about the issues that they say are of local and consent to their community.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Huberty,
I have a parliamentary inquiry,
please state your inquiry.
or a comment, or maybe perhaps a request.
Please state your parliamentary inquiry.
Many of us have bills on the calendar today, and this is a very serious thing I'm about to ask. I have a bill on the calendar for one of my constituents whose son passed away to do heart screening that is on page 12 of our calendar today. We've tried to pass this bill for 4 sessions. It was bottled up in committee by various lobbyist groups. I'm very concerned, like many others, that this are important bills to us on a personal level, personally to these families. I'm not sure what we're doing here. If we want to kill the bills, then I would respectfully request that we just kill them and move on today, if we could, please, sir. And if we're going to do this, I know it's late in the session and we always get here, but many of us have personal bills, and this is a personal request that we would please move ahead and go ahead and kill the bill. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Huberty. Mr. Kane.
Mr. Speaker, isn't it true, realizing that no one's going to stop Mr. Stickland for speaking for 10 minutes, that a member could just withdraw their bill from the calendar and we could all avoid
And
hearing
Mr.
Mr.
Clardy's
Stickland?
trying to make the move to withdraw his bill from the calendar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
So House Bill 1369 is withdrawn from the calendar.